The crystal plate shattered against my skull before I even registered Preston's hand moving. Food dripped down my face, mixing with something warm that might have been blood or just sauce from the roasted chicken. The entire dining room fell silent. 12 pairs of eyes stared at me, but no one moved to help. "How dare you say no to my mother, you useless girl?" Preston's voice filled the ornate room, bouncing off the vaulted ceilings of his family's estate. I sat there, perfectly still, feeling the weight of every gaze. My blue dress, the one Preston had insisted I wear tonight because it looked appropriate for family dinner, was now ruined with gravy and mashed potatoes. My hands trembled in my lap, but I forced them to be still. Beatrice Montgomery sat at the head of the table, her lips pressed into a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked satisfied, like a cat that had finally cornered a mouse. The diamond necklace at her throat caught the light from the chandelier, probably worth more than most people made in a year. "All I asked for was something simple," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Sign over that little apartment of yours. It's not like you need it. Preston provides everything for you. And the monthly payment I requested, $1,400, is nothing to a family like ours. It's about respect, Simone. About honoring your elders." I wiped the food off my shoulders slowly, deliberately. My fingers came away sticky, but I didn't look at them. Instead, I looked directly at Preston, then at his mother, then at each person sitting at that long mahogany table. His sister, Constance, looked away. His brother, Philip, suddenly became very interested in his wine glass. His father had already left the table earlier, claiming a business call. "You have no idea what I'm capable of," I said quietly. The words came out steady and calm, so different from how I felt inside. Inside I was screaming. Inside I was breaking. But they would never see that. Preston laughed, actually laughed. "Is that a threat? From you? You're nothing without me, Simone. Nothing. I made you. I gave you this life." I stood up slowly, carefully, like I was in a dream. More food fell from my hair, landing on the antique rug that Beatrice claimed had belonged to some European duchess. I didn't apologize. I didn't cry. I simply gathered my purse from the side table where I'd left it hours ago when we arrived for what I thought would be a normal family dinner. "Where do you think you're going?" Preston demanded. "We're not done here. You're going to apologize to my mother, and then you're going to sign those papers." I walked toward the door. My heels clicked on the marble floor, each step echoing in the horrible silence. "Simone," Beatrice called out, her voice sharp now, the sweetness gone. "If you walk out that door, you'll regret it. We can make your life very difficult." I paused, my hand on the ornate door handle. For just a moment, I considered turning around and saying something cutting, something that would hurt them the way they'd hurt me. But I didn't. I simply opened the door and walked out into the cool evening air. My car, a modest sedan that Preston always complained about, sat in the circular driveway next to his Bentley and his mother's Mercedes. I got in, started the engine, and drove away from that house, away from those people, away from the life I thought I had. The drive back to our penthouse apartment took 30 minutes. 30 minutes of me gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. 30 minutes of replaying the sound of that plate shattering, the feeling of Preston's rage washing over me, the smug look on Beatrice's face. I had married Preston 5 years ago, back when he was just starting his tech company. Back when he was charming and ambitious and told me I was the only woman who truly understood him. I had been a financial consultant then, good at my job, making excellent money. But Preston had convinced me to quit, to support him full-time as he built his empire. "I need you," he'd said. "I need someone I can trust, someone who believes in me." So I quit. I organized his life, I entertained his clients, I smiled at his investors, I played the perfect wife. And he became a billionaire. His company went public, and suddenly Preston Montgomery was on magazine covers, being interviewed on financial news networks, invited to exclusive galas. And I became invisible. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being his partner and became his accessory. Something pretty to have on his arm at events. Something to criticize when we were alone. My clothes were never quite right. My conversation was never quite interesting enough. My body was never quite perfect enough. And Beatrice, his mother, had encouraged every bit of it. She had never thought I was good enough for her son. Not rich enough, not connected enough, not prestigious enough. The fact that I came from a normal middle-class background was something she reminded me of constantly, in small cutting ways that Preston either didn't notice or didn't care about. The apartment was empty when I arrived. Preston would stay at his mother's house tonight, probably drinking expensive scotch and complaining about his ungrateful wife. Good. I needed time alone. I went straight to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. There was a small cut on my forehead where the plate had hit me, already starting to bruise. My carefully styled hair was a mess. My blue dress was completely ruined. But my eyes looked different. Determined. I showered, washing away the food and the humiliation, letting the hot water run until it turned cold. Then I put on comfortable clothes, made myself a cup of tea, and sat down at the desk in the spare bedroom that Preston never entered because he said it was too cluttered with my useless hobby stuff. My laptop sat where I'd left it that morning. I opened it and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I opened a browser and started searching. I searched for divorce attorneys. I searched for financial forensic specialists. I searched for women's legal aid organizations. I searched for information about marital property rights and asset protection. Hours passed. The tea grew cold. The apartment stayed silent except for the sound of my typing. And slowly, very slowly, a plan began to form in my mind. That apartment Beatrice wanted, the one she demanded I sign over, had belonged to my grandmother. Grandma Rose had left it to me when she died 3 years ago. It was in a good neighborhood, worth about $400,000 now. It was the only thing I owned outright in my name alone, and Beatrice knew it. She'd been circling it like a vulture for months, making comments about how it was just sitting there, and how her charity could make better use of it. Her charity. That thought made me pause. I pulled up the website for Beatrice's Foundation for Women's Education, the nonprofit she was always bragging about at social events. I started clicking through pages, looking at financial statements, reading mission statements. Something didn't look right. The numbers didn't add up. Donations came in, lots of them, but the actual grants given out seemed surprisingly small compared to the operating expenses. I made a note to look into this more carefully. Then I started looking at our bank accounts, the ones I could access. Preston had gradually moved more and more of our money into accounts that only had his name on them. He said it was for business purposes, for tax purposes, for investment purposes. I trusted him. I believed him. What an absolute fool I'd been. I found credit card statements showing charges at expensive hotels when Preston claimed to be at business conferences. I found flower delivery receipts that I'd never received flowers for. I found jewelry purchases from stores I'd never been to. My husband was having an affair. Maybe more than one. The sun was starting to rise when I finally closed my laptop. I hadn't slept. I hadn't cried. I had simply gathered information, piece by piece, like the financial consultant I used to be. The skills I thought I'd lost were still there, just dormant. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in 2 years. Brielle Stevens. We'd gone to college together, stayed close through our 20s, but drifted apart after I married Preston. She was a corporate attorney now, tough and brilliant. I sent her a text. Are you available for coffee this week? I need legal advice. It's urgent. The response came faster than I expected. How about today? 10 a.m.? And Simone, whatever you're going through, we'll handle it. I set the phone down and looked around the penthouse apartment. Modern furniture, expensive art, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city skyline. None of it felt like home. It felt like a beautiful cage. But that was about to change. I went to the bedroom, opened my closet, and pulled out a suitcase. I started packing, carefully, methodically. Clothes, shoes, documents, photos. Everything that was truly mine. Everything that mattered. By the time Preston came home that afternoon, I was gone. Brielle met me at a small coffee shop far from my usual neighborhood, far from anywhere Preston or his family might accidentally show up. She looked exactly as I remembered, confident and sharp in a red blazer and black pants, her natural hair styled in elegant locks. "You look terrible," she said as she hugged me, and somehow that directness was exactly what I needed. "I feel terrible," I admitted. We sat in a corner booth and I told her everything. The dinner, the plate, the demands for my apartment, the monthly payments. Brielle's expression grew darker with every detail. "That's assault," she said flatly. "You could press charges." "I want something better than charges," I said. "I want everything." Brielle leaned back, studying me. "Tell me what you mean by everything." So I did. I told her about the affair evidence I'd found. About the suspicious financial movements. About Beatrice's charity that didn't seem quite legitimate. About how I'd given up my career and now had almost nothing in my own name except that apartment. Except, I said slowly, remembering something, there was an investment I made early on. Before we got married. Preston was just starting his company, and I gave him $50,000 from my savings. He gave me a 40% stake in exchange. We signed papers. Brielle's eyes lit up. "Do you still have those papers?" "They're in a safety deposit box at my bank." Preston didn't even remember about them. Once he got other investors, he stopped mentioning it. Simone, Brielle said carefully, Preston's company is worth approximately $200 million right now. If you own 40% of that. The number hit me like a physical blow. $80 million. I owned $80 million worth of his company, and I'd completely forgotten about it in the chaos of being his wife. He's been trying to hide marital assets while you're sitting on a fortune you don't even realize you have, Brielle said. This changes everything. But we need to move fast. If he realizes what you know, he'll try to fight this in ways that could take years. What do I need to do? First, we document everything. The assault, the abuse, the financial manipulation. Second, we get a forensic accountant to trace every dollar Preston has moved around. Third, we file for divorce before he knows what's happening. And fourth, we claim your rightful share of that company. My hands shook as I held my coffee cup. Can we really do this? We can do this, Brielle said firmly. But I need you to be honest with me. Are you ready for war? Because that's what this will be. Preston and his mother won't go down easy. I thought about the sound of that plate shattering. The look in Preston's eyes when he'd called me useless. The years of slowly disappearing into the background of my own life. I'm ready, I said. We spent the next 3 hours going over everything. Brielle made lists, took notes, asked questions I hadn't even thought of. She explained the legal process, what to expect, what rights I had. She talked about restraining orders and temporary support and asset freezes. I need you to do something that might be difficult, Brielle said as we were finishing up. I need you to act normal for the next few days. Go home, act like nothing has changed. Can you do that? The thought of facing Preston, of pretending everything was fine, made my stomach turn. But I understood why it was necessary. We needed time to prepare without him knowing what was coming. I can do it, I said. That night I returned to the penthouse. Preston was there, sitting in the living room with a glass of scotch, watching the financial news. He barely looked at me when I walked in. Finally decided to come home? He said, his voice cold. I needed time to think, I said quietly. And, are you ready to apologize to my mother and sign those papers? I took a deep breath. Every fiber of my being wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of him and his mother. But I remembered Brielle's advice. Act normal. By time. I'll think about it, I said. Can we talk about this later? I have a headache. Preston waved his hand dismissively. Whatever. I have a conference call in an hour anyway. I went to the bedroom and closed the door. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from rage. From years of suppressed anger finally finding a direction. Over the next 2 days I played the role of the perfect wife. I made breakfast. I asked about his meetings. I smiled when appropriate. And every moment he was out of the apartment, I gathered evidence. I photographed documents. I downloaded bank statements. I made copies of emails he'd left open on his computer. I found receipts, messages, calendar entries that didn't match his explanations. And I discovered the name of his mistress, Natasha Coleman. She worked in his marketing department, 28 years old, with a smile that looked practiced in her company profile photo. I found hotel receipts dating back 14 months. I found text messages on an old phone he thought he'd hidden well enough. I found gifts, promises, lies. I'm going to leave her soon, one message read. Just need to get the finances sorted first. My mom has a plan. His mom has a plan. That phrase sent chills down my spine. This wasn't just an affair. This was a coordinated effort to strip me of everything before discarding me. I contacted Brielle with everything I'd found. She connected me with Julian Cross, a forensic accountant who specialized in cases of financial fraud and hidden assets. Julian was a quiet man in his 50s with glasses and an unremarkable appearance, but Brielle promised me he was the best. I've seen everything in my career, Julian told me during our first meeting in his office. Offshore accounts, shell companies, fake businesses. If Preston has hidden money, I'll find it. I gave him access to every financial document I could find. He assured me he'd work quickly and discreetly. Meanwhile, I did something else I hadn't done in years. I reached out to my old professional network. I sent emails to former colleagues, asked about job opportunities, tested the waters to see if my skills were still valued. The responses surprised me. 3 different firms wanted to meet with me. My former boss, who'd retired but still consulted, told me he'd always thought I'd made a mistake leaving the field. You were one of the best analysts I ever had, he said over the phone. If you're looking to come back, I know people who would hire you immediately. I scheduled interviews for the following week, telling Preston I was meeting old friends. He didn't care enough to ask for details. On the fourth day after the dinner incident, Julian called me. "Simone, you need to sit down for this," he said. I sat on the edge of the bed in the spare room, my heart pounding. "I've found at least $12 million in hidden assets so far," Julian said. "Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell companies in Delaware, investment accounts under his mother's name but funded with marital money. And that's just in the preliminary search. There's more, I'm certain of it." "He's been planning this for how long?" "Based on the paper trail, I'd say at least 2 years. Maybe longer. The movement of assets accelerated about 6 months ago. That's usually when someone is getting ready to file for divorce themselves, wanting to hide as much as possible first. So Preston had been planning to leave me. He and his mother had been systematically moving money, preparing to divorce me and leave me with nothing. The apartment demand, the monthly payments, those were just additional ways to extract whatever I had left. "There's something else," Julian said. "Beatrice's charity foundation. It's definitely fraudulent. She's claiming millions in donations, but the actual charitable work is minimal. Most of the money is being funneled back to family members through inflated salaries and fake consulting fees. This is federal crime territory, Simone. Tax fraud, wire fraud, possibly money laundering." I closed my eyes. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of the lies, tired of the manipulation, tired of being treated like I was worthless. "What do we do now?" I asked. "Now we build the case. Brielle will file for divorce, but we'll also be reporting this financial fraud to the appropriate authorities. Preston and his mother are going to face consequences far beyond a divorce settlement." That evening, Preston came home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. He poured himself a drink and sat in his usual spot. "I'm meeting with my mother tomorrow to finalize those papers for your apartment," he said casually. "You're signing them this week. This discussion is over." I looked at him, really looked at him. This man I'd loved, this man I'd sacrificed for, this man I'd believed in. He was a stranger. Maybe he always had been. "Okay," I said simply. He looked surprised by my lack of resistance. "Okay? Just like that." "I'll look at the papers," I said. "But I have some conditions." "You're not in a position to have conditions," Preston said, but he sounded less certain now. "Just small things," I said, keeping my voice light. "I want to make sure everything is done properly. Legal. You understand." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Fine. As long as you sign. As long as everything is fair," I agreed. That night, after Preston fell asleep in the master bedroom, I lay awake in the spare room and thought about my grandmother. Grandma Rose had been a strong woman, a woman who'd raised 3 children alone after my grandfather died. She'd worked 2 jobs, saved every penny, and eventually bought that apartment through sheer determination. "Never let anyone make you small," she told me once. "You're worth more than you know." I'd forgotten that lesson, but I was remembering it now. I picked up my phone and texted Brielle, "File the papers." "I'm ready." Her response came immediately, "I'll have them drawn up tonight. We serve him tomorrow." Tomorrow. My marriage would effectively end tomorrow. But somehow I didn't feel sad. I felt free. I got up and went to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Natasha was probably sleeping peacefully, thinking she'd won. Somewhere out there, Beatrice was probably planning her next move, confident in her power. Somewhere out there, Preston was dreaming of a future where I'd been erased from his life. They had no idea what was coming. I smiled for the first time in days. Not a sad smile, not a bitter smile. A real, genuine smile of anticipation. Let them think they'd won. Let them think I was defeated. Let them think I was nothing. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and went for a run. I hadn't run in years, not since Preston had commented that my legs were getting too muscular. But that morning, I needed to move, to feel my body doing something powerful and strong. The city was quiet at 5:30 in the morning. My breath came out in small clouds in the cool air. Every step felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. By the time I returned to the apartment, sweaty and exhausted but energized, Preston was still asleep. I showered, dressed in a green blouse and dark pants, professional and put together. Today I had my first job interview in 5 years. Today Brielle would be finalizing the divorce papers. Today everything would start to change. Preston left for his office at 8 a.m. without saying goodbye. He'd stopped saying goodbye months ago. I waited until his car disappeared around the corner, then I gathered my laptop and the folder of documents I'd prepared and headed to my interview. The financial consulting firm of Weber and Associates occupied 3 floors of a modern building downtown. I remembered the industry, remembered the pace and pressure of it. Part of me worried that I'd forgotten too much, that I'd been away too long. The managing partner, Robert Weber, met me in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. "Simone Harris," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I've heard excellent things about you from Thomas Fletcher." Thomas had been my old boss, the one who'd retired. Hearing that he'd recommended me meant more than I could express. We talked for an hour. Robert asked about my experience, my approach to financial analysis, my understanding of current market conditions. I'd spent the past week studying, preparing, remembering everything I used to know. The answers came easier than I expected. This language, this way of thinking, it was still inside me. Just buried. "I'll be honest with you," Robert said as our interview wound down. "We're looking for someone to head up our new division focusing on financial planning for high-net-worth individuals going through major life transitions. Divorces, inheritances, business sales. It's sensitive work requiring someone who understands both the numbers and the emotional aspects." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, going through exactly that kind of major life transition, interviewing for a job helping others do the same. "I think I understand that balance better than you might expect," I said carefully. Robert studied me for a moment. "Thomas mentioned you were going through some personal changes. Listen, Simone, what happens in your private life is your business. What I care about is whether you can do this job, and from everything I've seen today I think you can. The question is, do you want it? Did I want it? I thought about the past 5 years of arranging dinner parties and smiling at people I didn't like. Of having nothing that was truly mine except that apartment Preston wanted to take. Of forgetting who I used to be. "Yes," I said. "I absolutely want it." "Then it's yours. We can discuss salary and start date after you've had a chance to review our offer, but I can tell you now it's competitive. Very competitive." We shook hands again and I walked out of that building feeling like I'd won something important. Not just a job but a piece of myself. I called Brielle from my car. "How's it going with the papers?" "Almost done. We'll serve him at his office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I'm also filing for a temporary restraining order based on the assault, and we're requesting an immediate freeze on all marital assets pending full discovery. Julian's report on the hidden money is attached to the filing. Simone, when this hits, it's going to hit hard." "Good," I said. That afternoon I had to do something that made my skin crawl. I had to go to Beatrice's house and apologize. Brielle had insisted on it. "We need her to think you're beaten," she'd said. "We need her to feel safe. The more confident they are, the less careful they'll be." So I drove to Beatrice's mansion in the suburbs, a sprawling property with manicured gardens and a fountain in the circular driveway. The housekeeper let me in and I found Beatrice in her sitting room, the one she called her morning room, even though it was 3 p.m. "Well," Beatrice said, looking up from her magazine. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I came to apologize," I said, forcing the words out. "I was disrespectful at dinner. Preston was right to be angry with me." Beatrice's smile was sharp and satisfied. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. Perhaps there's hope for you yet." I sat down when she gestured to a chair even though I wanted to run. "About the apartment," I said. "And the monthly payments. I've been thinking about what you said. About respect and family. And?" Beatrice leaned forward slightly. "I want to make sure I understand exactly what you need. Preston mentioned you have papers drawn up?" "I do. It's quite simple really. You sign over the deed to that little apartment, and you commit to contributing $1,400 per month to my foundation. In exchange, you remain part of this family. You get to keep your position as Preston's wife, with all the benefits that brings." The way she said it, like she was offering me some great gift, made my blood boil. But I kept my face neutral, submissive. "Can I see the papers? I just want to read through them carefully before signing." Beatrice studied me for a long moment, then rang a small bell on the side table. The housekeeper appeared. "Bring me the Montgomery file from my office," Beatrice instructed. While we waited, Beatrice talked about her plans for the apartment. She wanted to use it as a temporary residence for women her foundation helped. Except, she explained, those women would pay rent. Rent that would go directly to the foundation. "So you want me to give you an apartment worth $400,000, which you'll then rent out and keep the income?" I said slowly. "It's for charity," Beatrice said, as if that explained everything. The housekeeper returned with a folder. Beatrice handed it to me. I opened it and started reading. The legal language was dense, but I'd spent enough time reviewing documents in my old career to understand what I was looking at. This wasn't just about the apartment. Hidden in the legal terminology were clauses that would give Beatrice power of attorney over certain financial decisions. Clauses that would make me responsible for debts she might incur. Clauses that essentially made me financially subservient to her. This was a trap. A legal trap designed to bind me to them while extracting everything I had. This is quite comprehensive, I said carefully. Can I take it to review with a lawyer? Just to make sure I understand everything? Beatrice's expression cooled. What's there to understand? It's simple. You give us what we ask for or there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? Preston is a very important man. He has connections, influence. If you fight us, we will make your life extremely difficult. We'll contest any divorce. We'll tie you up in court for years. We'll make sure everyone in your social circle knows what an ungrateful, difficult person you are. Is that really what you want? I looked at this woman, this cruel, greedy woman, and I saw her so clearly now. She wasn't powerful. She was just mean. And mean people always underestimated others. No, I said quietly. That's not what I want. Good. Then you'll sign the papers by the end of this week. I need a few days to arrange things. But yes. Beatrice smiled, satisfied. I knew you'd see reason eventually. Preston chose well when he married you. You're trainable. Trainable. Like I was a dog. I left her house and sat in my car for several minutes, shaking with rage. But underneath the rage was something else. Satisfaction. Because Beatrice had just confirmed everything I suspected. They were planning to trap me legally, to drain me financially, and then discard me. But I'd seen their trap. And I wasn't walking into it. I drove to Julian's office for our afternoon meeting. He had news. I found another $8 million, he said, spreading documents across the conference table. That brings the total hidden assets to $20 million. Preston has been very busy. There's also evidence that he's been inflating business expenses to reduce reported income, which affects what marital assets look like on paper. Can we prove it? We can prove all of it. Bank transfers, shell company registrations, communication between Preston and his financial advisors. It's all here. I looked at the papers, page after page of evidence. My husband's betrayal in black and white. There's also this, Julian said, pulling out another folder. Information on Natasha Coleman. She's been receiving payments from Preston's company far in excess of her actual salary. $10,000 a month going into an account in her name. Hush money? More like mistress maintenance. But here's the interesting part. Those payments are being categorized as consulting fees, which means they're being deducted as business expenses. That's fraud. Preston is using company money to pay his girlfriend and then writing it off on the company's taxes. I absorbed this information. Preston wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal. How bad could this get for him? I asked. If federal authorities investigate, he's looking at potential charges for tax fraud, wire fraud, and possibly embezzlement if it turns out he's taken money from investors. Combined with the assault charge you could file, the divorce proceedings, and the public scandal, Preston could lose everything. Everything. That word hung in the air. What about Beatrice? Her foundation is definitely fraudulent. I've traced money in and out. She's taking in donations under the guise of helping women with education, but less than 10% of the money actually goes to any charitable purpose. The rest goes to salaries for family members, luxury expenses categorized as business costs, and transfers to personal accounts. The IRS would be very interested in this information. I thought about Beatrice's smug face, her threats, her cruelty. Turn over everything on the foundation to the appropriate authorities, I said. She deserves what's coming. Julian nodded. I'll prepare the report for the IRS and the State Attorney General's office. This kind of fraud, they take it seriously. That evening, I met with Brielle one more time to review everything before the papers were served. Are you absolutely certain? She asked me. Once we do this, there's no going back. I thought about the sound of that plate shattering. I thought about years of belittlement, of disappearing, of being made to feel small. I thought about Beatrice's word, trainable. I'm certain, I said. Serve the papers. Brielle smiled. Then tomorrow morning, Preston Montgomery's world changes forever. I went back to the apartment that night. Preston was out, probably with Natasha. I didn't care. I packed another bag with more of my belongings, photographs of my grandmother, jewelry that had been gifts from my parents, documents that mattered. Then I did something I'd been planning. I took my grandmother's old recipe book, the one with her handwritten notes in the margins, and I sat on the couch and read through it. Her chicken and dumplings recipe. Her sweet potato pie. her special Sunday sauce. Each recipe was a memory. Sunday dinners at her apartment, the smell of food cooking, her laugh, her advice, her love. Never let anyone make you small, I whispered, remembering. I wasn't small. I never had been. I just forgotten for a while. My phone buzzed with a text from Brielle. Process server is confirmed for 10 a.m. tomorrow. Get ready. I texted back, I'm ready. And I was. The morning Preston's world would crumble. I woke up at 6 a.m. feeling oddly calm. I made myself breakfast, actually tasting the food for the first time in months. Everything seemed sharper, clearer. The coffee was richer. The morning light through the windows was brighter. Preston came out of the bedroom at 7:30, already dressed in one of his expensive suits. He barely glanced at me as he grabbed his briefcase. I have meetings all morning, he said. Don't wait up for me tonight. I'll probably be late. With Natasha, I thought. But I just nodded. Before you go, I said, keeping my voice casual, your mother showed me those papers yesterday. I have some questions about them. Preston paused, looking irritated. What kind of questions? Legal stuff. Clauses I don't understand. I want to make sure I'm not signing something that could cause problems later. It's fine. My mother had her lawyers draw them up. Just sign them. I will. I just need a few more days to review everything properly. Preston's jaw tightened. Simone, we've been patient with you. Don't test that patience. I'm not testing anything. I'm being responsible. Isn't that what you always say? Be responsible? He stared at me for a long moment, trying to figure out if I was being sincere or difficult. Finally he shrugged. Fine. But this gets done by Friday. I mean it. Friday, I agreed. He left. I watched from the window as his Bentley pulled out of the parking garage. In 3 hours, a process server would walk into his office and hand him divorce papers. In 3 hours, everything would be different. I spent the morning organizing documents and making phone calls. I called my bank and had my personal accounts separated from any joint access. I called a locksmith and arranged to have the locks changed on my grandmother's apartment, which I'd been renting out but was currently vacant. I called the phone company and had a new number set up on a new account. I was building walls, fortifications, protecting myself. At 9:45 my phone rang. Brielle. The server is on his way into Preston's building now. Are you somewhere safe? I'm at the apartment. Preston's at his office. Good. Stay there. Once he's served, he's going to call you. Don't answer. Let him leave messages. We need documentation of his reaction. Okay. Simone, are you all right? Was I all right? I was ending my marriage. I was about to engage in what would probably be an ugly legal battle. I was facing an uncertain future. I'm better than I've been in years, I said honestly. At exactly 10:03 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Preston's name flashed on the screen. I watched it ring, buzz, ring again. Then it stopped. A moment later, a text message appeared. Call me now. I deleted it. Another call. Another message. What the hell did you do? I turned the phone over so I couldn't see the screen lighting up with his increasingly frantic attempts to reach me. Instead, I called Gabriel Thompson, Preston's business partner. We'd met dozens of times at company events. Gabriel was quieter than Preston, more thoughtful. I'd always wondered why he tolerated Preston's arrogance. Simone, Gabriel said, sounding surprised when he answered. Is everything okay? I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet? Today if possible? There was a pause. This is about the divorce papers, isn't it? Preston just stormed out of his office shouting about lawyers. The whole floor heard him. Yes. But it's also about the company. I have information you need to see. What kind of information? The kind that affects your investment and the company's reputation. Gabriel, I'm not trying to hurt the business. But there are things happening that you should know about. Another pause, longer this time. Can you come to my office at 2 p.m.? I'll be there. I hung up and immediately called Robert Weber at the consulting firm. Simone, good to hear from you. Have you had a chance to think about our offer? I have. And I accept. When can I start? How about Monday? That gives you the weekend to get organized. Monday is perfect. After I hung up, I sat there for a moment, processing. In the space of one morning, I'd officially ended my marriage and started a new career. The life I'd known was over. The life I was building was beginning. At 2 p.m. I arrived at Gabriel's office. His company was in a different building from Preston's, though they shared the tech venture. Gabriel had his own investments, his own projects. He'd always been the more stable one. Come in, Gabriel said, gesturing to a chair in his sleek office. I have to admit, I'm curious and a little worried about this conversation. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared, copies of everything Julian had found regarding Preston's financial manipulations within the company. Gabriel, did you know Preston has been categorizing personal expenses as business costs? What kind of personal expenses? $10,000 a month going to his girlfriend, listed as consulting fees. Luxury purchases for himself and his mother, all written off as business entertainment or client gifts. He's inflating operating costs to reduce reported profits, which affects everyone's share value. Gabriel's expression grew darker as he flipped through the documents I'd provided. Bank transfers, expense reports, email communications between Preston and the company accountant. This is fraud, Gabriel said flatly. Yes. Why are you showing me this? It was a fair question. I could have used this information purely for my divorce case, kept it between me and my lawyers. Because I don't want to see the company destroyed, I said honestly. There are employees there, people with families who depend on those jobs. If federal investigators come in because of Preston's personal misconduct, it could hurt everyone. But if the board acts first, if you remove Preston and clean this up internally before it becomes a criminal investigation, you might be able to protect the company. Gabriel leaned back in his chair, studying me. You know, I never understood Preston's marriage to you. You were always too smart, too kind for him. He didn't deserve you. No, I agreed. He didn't. There's something else you should know, Gabriel said slowly. Preston has been talking about pushing me out. He wants full control of the company. He's been maneuvering behind the scenes, trying to get board members on his side. Would it surprise you to learn that I own 40% of the company? Gabriel's eyes widened. What? I pulled out another folder, this one containing the original investment documents from 5 years ago. I gave Preston his seed money to start the business. In exchange, he gave me a significant stake. He never bought me out, never had me sign away those shares. I've been a silent partner this whole time, forgotten but legally valid. Gabriel started laughing, a genuine sound of surprise and delight. Does Preston know? Not yet. He will soon. This changes everything. With your 40% and my 35%, we control the company. Preston only has 25%. We can outvote him on anything. I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but Gabriel was right. Preston wasn't in control at all. He just thought he was. I need to call an emergency board meeting, Gabriel said, already reaching for his phone. If we move fast, we can force Preston out before he does any more damage. There's one thing I need, I said. I don't want to be actively involved in running the company. I'm starting a new job, building a new life. But I want my ownership stake protected, and I want fair compensation for my shares. That's reasonable. We could structure it as a passive investment. You maintain ownership, receive dividends, have voting rights on major decisions, but you're not required to be involved in day-to-day operations. That works for me. Gabriel walked me out personally, shaking my hand at the elevator. You know, I always thought you were just Preston's trophy wife. I'm sorry for underestimating you. A lot of people did, I said. I underestimated myself for a while too. Over the next few days, things happened fast. The board meeting Gabriel called resulted in a vote removing Preston as CEO. The official reason given was financial irregularities requiring investigation. Gabriel was named interim CEO while an audit was conducted. Preston went ballistic. He tried calling me hundreds of times. He showed up at the apartment, but I'd already moved to my grandmother's place and had the locks changed. He tried to access our joint accounts, only to find them frozen by court order. He tried to turn his family against me, but Beatrice was too busy dealing with her own problems. The IRS had received Julian's report on Beatrice's foundation. They'd opened an investigation. Federal agents had shown up at her house with a warrant to review her financial records. Suddenly, Beatrice wasn't so powerful anymore. She was scrambling, hiring expensive lawyers, trying to figure out how I'd known about her schemes. Natasha, Preston's girlfriend, found herself out of a job. Once the board discovered the fraudulent consulting payments, they terminated her immediately. She tried to sue for wrongful termination, but the evidence of what those payments were really for made her case impossible. I watched all of this unfold from a distance, staying focused on my own life. My first week at Weber & Associates went better than I'd hoped. The skills came back quickly. I was good at this work. I'd forgotten how good I was. One evening as I was leaving the office, I ran into my new colleague Lauren. She was around my age, confident and friendly. Some of us are getting drinks after work Friday, she said. Want to join? It was such a simple invitation, but it meant everything. Normal social interaction. coworkers becoming friends. A life that wasn't centered around Preston's needs and schedule. I'd like that, I said. Friday night, I went out with my new colleagues. We went to a casual bar, nothing fancy. We talked about work and movies and nothing particularly important. It was wonderful. I laughed genuinely for the first time in months. At home later, I found a voicemail from Preston. His voice was different now. Not angry. Defeated. Simone, we need to talk. Please. This has gotten out of hand. Can we just sit down and work something out? I deleted the message. My phone rang again. Brielle this time. The forensic audit of Preston's company found even more discrepancies, she said. He's looking at potential criminal charges. The company's lawyers are cooperating with authorities to avoid corporate liability. Preston is being hung out to dry by his own board. How long until the divorce is finalized? With all the asset discovery, probably 6 months. But we're in a strong position. Preston's lawyers know they can't win this. They'll try to settle. I want the maximum allowed by law, I said. Not because I need the money. Because I earned it. Every dollar he has, I helped him get. That's what we'll fight for, Brielle promised. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I invited my parents over to my grandmother's apartment, the one I'd saved from Beatrice's clutches. My mother cried when she saw me. Baby, we've been so worried. Preston wouldn't let us talk to you. I hadn't realized how much he'd isolated me from my own family. Phone calls had become rare, visits even rarer. He'd always had an excuse, always made it difficult. I'm sorry, I said. I should have reached out. You're out now, my father said, hugging me tight. That's what matters. We spent the afternoon together and I told them everything. The abuse, the betrayal, the divorce, the job. They listened, sometimes angry, sometimes sad, but always supportive. Your grandmother would be proud of you, my mother said. She always said you had steel in your spine. You just needed to remember it. As they were leaving, my father pulled me aside. That apartment Preston's mother wanted you to sign over, your grandmother left you that for exactly this reason. She wanted you to have something that was yours alone, something no man could take from you. She knew. Somehow she knew. After they left, I stood in the apartment that had saved me, looking at the walls my grandmother had painted, the floors she'd walked on. This place was more than just property. It was a foundation. A reminder that I came from strong women who survived hard things. I could survive too. I was surviving. Monday morning, I dressed carefully for work. A red blazer, my grandmother's pearl earrings, and heels that made me feel powerful. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked confident, determined, fierce. The office was busy when I arrived. Robert greeted me and introduced me to the rest of the team I'd be working with. Everyone, this is Simone Harris. She'll be heading up our new client transition division. I know you'll make her feel welcome. The day was full of meetings, learning new systems, meeting clients. It was exhausting and exhilarating. By 5 p.m., I was mentally drained but deeply satisfied. As I was packing up my desk, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Is this Simone Harris? A woman's voice asked when I answered. Yes. This is Jennifer from Channel 7 News. We're doing a story on Preston Montgomery and the allegations of fraud at his company. Would you be willing to comment? The press. Of course. The story was too juicy for them to ignore. Billionaire tech mogul accused of fraud, messy divorce, mother under federal investigation. I have no comment, I said firmly. Please don't call this number again. I hung up. But I knew this was just the beginning. The story was breaking publicly now. That evening I watched the news. There was Preston's face on the screen, a photograph from some business conference. The anchor's voice was somber. Preston Montgomery, founder of Montgomery Tech Solutions, has been removed as CEO amid allegations of financial fraud. Sources say the FBI is investigating possible securities fraud and tax evasion. Montgomery's estranged wife has filed for divorce, and his mother's charity foundation is under investigation by the IRS. There it was. My private nightmare, now public knowledge. My phone rang. Brielle. Did you see the news? I'm watching it now. Preston's trying to blame you. His publicist is putting out statements suggesting you're behind false allegations, that you're vengeful over the divorce. They're trying to paint you as the villain. I'd expected this. Men like Preston always blamed women when things went wrong. What do? We stick to facts. I've prepared a statement for the press. It's simple. Ms. Harris is cooperating fully with all legal proceedings and has no further comment at this time. Don't engage with his narrative. Don't defend yourself publicly. Let the evidence speak. Okay. How are you holding up? Better than him, I said honestly. The next day the press found me outside my office building. Cameras, microphones, reporters shouting questions. Miss Harris, did you know about your husband's fraud? Are you seeking revenge for the affair? What do you say to allegations that you're lying? I kept walking, saying nothing, just as Brielle had instructed. Security helped me get to my car. Inside I sat for a moment, my hands shaking. This was the price of fighting back. Public scrutiny, judgment, speculation. But I'd rather be judged while standing up for myself than disappear while staying quiet. At home that evening, I found a letter that had been slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. Drop the divorce proceedings and the allegations. This doesn't have to get uglier than it already is. Think about what's best for everyone. A threat. Anonymous, cowardly, but a threat nonetheless. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to Brielle. Her response came quickly. Police report. Now. I spent 2 hours at the police station filing a report about the threatening letter. The officer taking my statement was kind but skeptical. Do you know who might have sent this? My estranged husband or his family. Maybe his girlfriend. I don't know for certain. Without more evidence, there's not much we can do except document it. I understand. As I was leaving the station, a woman approached me in the parking lot. She was young, maybe mid-20s, nervous. Are you Simone Harris? She asked. Yes. I worked at Montgomery Tech. I was there when they fired Natasha Coleman. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for what? For standing up to him. Preston Montgomery harassed half the women in that office, but no one said anything because he was the boss. Natasha wasn't the only one he had an affair with. There were others before her. He promised them promotions, then dropped them when he got bored. It was disgusting. But everyone was too scared to speak up. My heart sank. Multiple women. Multiple affairs. Multiple victims. Have any of them filed complaints? I asked. Not officially. But if someone did, if there was an investigation, I think a lot of women would come forward. We just need someone to go first. I gave her my lawyer's card. If anyone wants to talk, have them contact Brielle Stevens. She'll listen. The woman thanked me again and left. I sat in my car processing this new information. Preston wasn't just a cheater. He was a predator. I called Brielle immediately. We need to explore a harassment angle. Apparently there are multiple women at his company who could testify about his conduct. That strengthens everything, Brielle said. Pattern of behavior, abuse of power. Simone, this could get bigger than just divorce proceedings. Good, I said. He should face consequences for all of it. Over the next week, 4 women contacted Brielle. 4 women with stories of Preston's inappropriate behavior, unwanted advances, promises of career advancement in exchange for sexual favors. Some had documentation. Text messages, emails, witnesses. Brielle compiled everything and sent it to the company's board. Within 48 hours, Montgomery Tech issued a statement announcing they were conducting an internal investigation into workplace misconduct. Preston's world was collapsing faster than anyone could have predicted. Then Beatrice made a mistake. She held a press conference, standing on the steps of her mansion with her own attorney beside her. She declared that she was innocent of all charges, that her foundation had helped hundreds of women, that this was all a conspiracy by bitter family members trying to steal her life's work. She specifically named me, claiming I was trying to destroy her family because my marriage had failed. Simone Harris is a vindictive, ungrateful woman who trapped my son into marriage and is now trying to profit from his success, Beatrice told the cameras. It was defamation, pure and simple. And it gave us exactly what we needed. Brielle filed a defamation lawsuit against Beatrice within 24 hours. We had documentation proving Beatrice's foundation was fraudulent. We had documentation of the assault at the dinner. We had witnesses to her threats. She just handed us a gift, Brielle said. She opened herself up to discovery. We can now subpoena all her financial records, all her communications. She's going to regret that press conference. The media coverage intensified. The story had everything people loved. Wealth, scandal, betrayal, a powerful family brought low. I hated being at the center of it, but I understood it was necessary. Sunlight was the best disinfectant. The more people knew about what Preston and Beatrice had done, the harder it would be for them to manipulate the narrative. My job became a refuge. At the office, I was just Simone the financial consultant, not Simone the spurned wife. I threw myself into my work, helping clients protect their assets, plan for their futures, navigate complex financial transitions. One client, a woman going through her own divorce, cried in my office. "I feel so stupid," she said. "I trusted him completely. How could I not have seen what he was doing?" "You're not stupid," I told her gently. "Trusting someone you love isn't stupid. It's normal. What they did with that trust, that's the problem. Not you." Helping her made me feel purposeful in a way I hadn't felt in years. This was what I was supposed to be doing. Using my skills, my experience to help others. 3 weeks after the divorce papers were served, Preston's lawyers reached out about settlement negotiations. "They want to meet," Brielle told me. "Preston is willing to discuss terms." "What kind of terms?" "They're starting with an offer of $5 million and sole ownership of the penthouse." I laughed. Actually laughed. "That's insulting." "It is. Which is why we're going to counter with $40 million plus your 40% company shares protected as separate property, plus the penthouse, plus his beach house, plus alimony." "Will they agree to that?" "Not at first. But we have leverage they don't. The harassment allegations, the fraud evidence, the public scrutiny. Preston needs this to go away more than we need to settle quickly." "Then let's make him wait," I said. "I'm in no hurry." The settlement negotiations dragged on for weeks. Preston's lawyers kept trying to lowball us. We kept countering with higher demands, backed by more evidence of his misconduct. In the meantime, Gabriel called me. "The board wants to offer you a seat," he said. "Official board member position at Montgomery Tech. You'd have voting power on all major decisions and you'd be compensated accordingly." I thought I was staying as a passive investor? "You could. But honestly, Simone, we need someone with actual integrity on that board." Preston surrounded himself with yes-men and cronies. "We're trying to rebuild the company's reputation. Having you involved sends a message that things are changing." I thought about it. Part of me wanted nothing to do with anything connected to Preston. But another part of me, the part that remembered giving him that initial $50,000 and believing in his vision, wanted to see the company become what it could have been without his corruption. "I'll do it," I said. "But I'm not attending every meeting. I have my own career now. We can work with that." My first board meeting was surreal. Sitting at that long table, surrounded by men in suits, discussing quarterly projections and strategic planning. This should have been my world all along. I'd just taken a 5-year detour through hell to get here. After the meeting, one of the other board members approached me. "I voted against removing Preston originally," he admitted. "I thought the allegations were exaggerated." "I'm sorry. You were right about everything. Thank you for saying that. What he did, how he treated you and those other women, it's inexcusable. I'm glad you fought back." Small victories. Small moments of vindication. They added up. That weekend, I did something just for myself. I booked a spa day. Massage, facial, the works. I'd spent months in survival mode, fighting battles, building my new life. I needed to breathe. In the quiet of the spa, lying there with cucumber slices on my eyes and soft music playing, I felt something release. Tension I didn't even know I'd been carrying. Fear I'd been pushing down. Grief for the life I'd thought I was building with Preston. I let myself cry finally. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears rolling down my temples. The marriage had been real to me even if it had been a lie to him. I was allowed to mourn it. But I was also allowed to celebrate its ending. When I left the spa that afternoon, I felt lighter. Clear. Ready. Preston wanted a settlement? Fine. But he was going to pay for everything he'd done. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment of cruelty. I wasn't the scared woman who'd walked out of that dinner anymore. I was a woman who knew her worth. And I wasn't backing down. The settlement conference was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in a conference room at Brielle's law firm. I dressed in a green suit that made me feel powerful, my grandmother's pearls at my ears, my hair pulled back in a severe bun. Preston arrived with 2 lawyers, both expensive-looking men with briefcases and stern expressions. He looked terrible. Thinner, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. Part of me felt satisfied seeing him brought so low. Part of me felt nothing at all. We sat across from each other at the long table. Preston wouldn't meet my eyes. "Let's begin," the mediator said. "Mr. Montgomery, your counsel has indicated you're prepared to make an offer?" Preston's lead attorney, a man named Richard something, cleared his throat. "Our client is willing to offer $8 million, the beach house property, and a vehicle of Ms. Harris's choosing to settle all claims." I didn't react. I'd expected them to come in low. Brielle responded calmly. "My client rejects that offer. Ms. Harris is seeking $45 million, her full 40% ownership stake in Montgomery Tech to remain intact and separate, The penthouse apartment, the beach house, both vehicles, and monthly alimony of $15,000 for 5 years. Preston flinched at the numbers. Good. That's absurd, Richard said. Our client doesn't have that kind of liquid capital. Your client has offshore accounts totaling at least $20 million, Brielle countered. We have documentation of every account, every transfer. Your client also still owns 25% of a company currently valued at approximately $180 million. He has the resources. The question is whether he wants this resolved quietly or wants us to continue presenting evidence of his fraud to federal investigators. Preston finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Simone, can we talk? Just the two of us. No, I said firmly. Please. 5 minutes. These lawyers don't understand what we had. What we had. I kept my voice level, professional. You mean the marriage where you systematically stole from me? Where you had affairs while I supported your career? Where you let your mother abuse me and then assaulted me in front of your family? That's what we had, Preston. Don't romanticize it. He looked away, his jaw clenching. The negotiations continued for 3 hours. Back and forth, offers and counteroffers. Preston's lawyers tried every angle. They claimed I was exaggerating the abuse. They suggested the affair was my fault for being emotionally distant. They implied I was a gold digger who'd never loved him. I sat through it all stone-faced. Every accusation just proved I was right to leave. Finally, Richard played what he thought was his trump card. If this goes to trial, Ms. Harris, everything will become public. Every detail of your marriage, your life, your personal history. Is that really what you want? Are you threatening me? I asked calmly. I'm simply pointing out that publicity cuts both ways. Let me be very clear, I said, leaning forward. I have nothing to hide. Every accusation I've made is documented. Every claim I've filed is supported by evidence. But your client, he has everything to lose. His business reputation is already destroyed. His company has removed him. His mother is under criminal investigation. If this goes to trial, every ugly detail comes out. Every affair, every woman he harassed, every dollar he stole. And I have witnesses, documents, and recordings. So please threaten me with publicity. I welcome it. The room went silent. Finally, Preston spoke again. I'll agree to $35 million, the properties, and $10,000 monthly alimony for 3 years. That's my final offer. Brielle looked at me. This was my decision. $40 million, I said. The properties, both vehicles, and $12,000 monthly for 4 years. And a public apology acknowledging the assault and the affairs. Preston's face went red. A public apology? Are you kidding? You broke my trust, my heart, and a plate over my head. Yes, Preston. A public apology. Or we go to trial and let a judge decide. We stared at each other across that table. This man I'd loved, who'd become a stranger. This man who'd hurt me in ways I was still discovering. His lawyers whispered urgently to him. Finally he nodded. Fine. $40 million, the properties, the vehicles, the alimony, and a statement. But I'm not calling it an apology. It'll be an acknowledgement that the marriage ended badly. The statement will include specific acknowledgement of physical assault and infidelity, Brielle interjected. That's non-negotiable. More whispered conversation between Preston and his lawyers. Agreed, Richard finally said. The mediator drew up the terms. We'd come back to sign final papers once everything was drafted properly. For now, we had an agreement in principle. As everyone was packing up to leave, Preston approached me. Was it worth it? He asked quietly. Destroying everything we built? I didn't destroy anything, I said. You did. I'm just holding you accountable. I loved you, Simone. Maybe not perfectly, but I did. No, Preston. You loved what I could do for you. You loved having someone to manage your life while you got to be important. That's not love. That's exploitation. He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then closed it. What could he say? I was right and we both knew it. I walked out of that conference room with my head high. $40 million. Justice. Freedom. But the fight wasn't over yet. That afternoon, I met with Gabriel at his office. The harassment investigation found substantial evidence of misconduct, he told me. 7 women total have come forward with complaints against Preston. The company is settling with each of them and implementing new HR policies. Preston is permanently barred from any leadership role. What about criminal charges for the fraud? The FBI is still investigating. It's slow, but they're building a case. His offshore accounts have been frozen. Beatrice's assets are frozen too, pending the IRS investigation. And the company? How is it recovering? Gabriel smiled. Better than expected. Removing Preston was like removing a tumor. The stock actually went up once investors realized we were cleaning house. Several clients who'd left came back. We're hiring a new CEO, someone with a clean reputation and actual ethics. It was strange hearing about Preston's failure being good for the company I partly owned. But it was true. He'd been the problem. Without him, things could actually improve. There's something else, Gabriel said. Natasha Coleman is trying to sell her story to tabloids. She's claiming Preston promised to marry her, that he led her on. Let her, I said. I don't care what she says. The company's lawyers think we should pay her off to keep her quiet. No. Gabriel looked surprised. No. If she wants to tell her story, let her. Let everyone see exactly who Preston is. The more people who speak up, the clearer the pattern becomes. I'm done with covering things up to protect him. All right, Gabriel said. I'll let the lawyers know. Natasha's interview ran in a celebrity magazine the following week. She painted herself as a victim, a young woman seduced by a powerful married man who'd made promises he never intended to keep. She claimed he'd told her his marriage was over, that Simone was cold and distant, that he was only staying for appearance's sake. Reading it made me angry, but not at Natasha. At Preston. He'd lied to both of us, played us against each other, created a narrative where he was the victim of two demanding women. The article included photos of them together at hotels, copies of texts where he called her baby, and made plans for their future. It was humiliating, but it was also vindicating. Here was proof, in glossy magazine pages, of exactly who my husband had been. My phone rang. My mother. I saw the article, she said. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said honestly. Let people see the truth. I'm done hiding. Your father wants to come down there and give Preston a piece of his mind. Tell Dad I appreciate it, but Preston's already getting what he deserves. His life is falling apart. That's punishment enough. After we hung up, I sat with that thought. Preston's life was falling apart. His company had expelled him. His reputation was destroyed. His money was tied up in legal battles. His family was under investigation. Even his girlfriend had turned on him. But I was thriving. At work, I'd just been given my first major client, a woman who'd built a successful business and was going through a divorce from a partner who claimed he deserved half despite having contributed nothing. I helped her document everything, protect her assets, prove her sole contribution to the business. We won. She kept her company. Thank you, she said, hugging me after the final court hearing. You saved my life's work. That was what I wanted to do. Save women's life's work. Help them see their value. Give them the tools to fight back. The settlement with Preston was finalized 3 weeks later. I signed papers, he signed papers, money transferred. The penthouse was legally mine. The beach house was mine. The vehicles, the alimony, everything we'd negotiated. And Preston released his public statement. I deeply regret the ways my marriage to Simone Harris ended. I acknowledge that I was unfaithful and that during a family gathering, in anger, I physically assaulted her. This behavior was unacceptable and I take full responsibility. I wish Simone well in her future. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't particularly heartfelt. But it was public acknowledgement and that mattered. The divorce was finalized on a Friday afternoon. Brielle called me with the news. It's done, she said. You're officially divorced. I hung up the phone and looked around my grandmother's apartment. Sunlight streamed through the windows. I'd painted the walls a soft yellow, hung new curtains, filled the space with plants and books and things that made me happy. I was 32 years old. I was divorced. I was a millionaire. I was a successful financial consultant. I owned part of a tech company. I was free. I called my parents and told them the news. I called my friends and told them. I texted Gabriel and thanked him for his support. Then I did something I'd been planning for weeks. I called the women's shelter I'd been researching, the one that helped victims of domestic violence. I'd like to make a donation, I told the director. A substantial one. That's wonderful, she said. May I ask how much? $2 million. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, I'm sorry, did you say 2 million? I did. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I want other women to have the resources they need to escape, to rebuild, to thrive. The director was crying by the time we finished the call. The donation would fund their operations for years, help hundreds of women. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood on the small balcony of my grandmother's apartment, looking out at the city. It wasn't as impressive a view as the penthouse had been. But it was mine. Truly, completely mine. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You'll regret what you've done. I screenshot the text and sent it to Brielle, then blocked the number. Probably Preston or someone he'd put up to it. It didn't matter. He couldn't hurt me anymore. I had money. I had a career. I had my freedom. And that was everything. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I walked into the boardroom at Montgomery Tech for my first meeting as an official board member. The company had transformed since Preston's removal. New leadership, new policies, new energy. The new CEO, a woman named Patricia Green, greeted me warmly. Simone, glad to have you here. We're about to review quarterly earnings. The numbers were impressive. Revenue was up 23%. Client satisfaction had improved dramatically. Employee retention had increased once word spread that the toxic leadership was gone. We're considering renaming the company, Patricia said during the meeting. Montgomery Tech still carries negative associations with Preston's scandal. We're thinking of rebranding as something more forward-thinking. I support that, I said. The others nodded in agreement. After the meeting, Gabriel pulled me aside. Have you heard about Preston lately? No. I've been avoiding news about him. He's working at a mid-size firm now. Middle management position. Making maybe $80,000 a year. Living in a one-bedroom apartment outside the city. From Billionaire CEO to middle management. The fall had been complete. How's he handling it? I asked, not sure why I cared. Not well from what I hear. He's bitter, angry, still trying to blame everyone but himself. He actually tried to apply for a position here under a different name. HR flagged it immediately. I shook my head. Preston still didn't understand. He'd lost everything because of his own choices. No one had done this to him. He'd done it to himself. What about Beatrice? I asked. Convicted of tax fraud and wire fraud. She's under house arrest for 3 years and has to pay back $4 million in restitution plus penalties. Her foundation has been dissolved. Her social circle has completely abandoned her. Beatrice had spent years building her reputation as a philanthropist, a respected member of high society. Now she was a convicted criminal, alone in her mansion with an ankle monitor. And Natasha? Last I heard, she moved to another state. Couldn't find work here after the scandal. She tried to sue Preston for emotional distress, but the case was dismissed. Everyone connected to Preston's web of lies had faced consequences. Not just me. We'd all been affected by his selfishness. But I was the only one who'd turned it into something positive. My client list at Weber & Associates had grown steadily. I specialized in helping women protect themselves financially, whether they were going through divorce, starting businesses, or planning for futures their partners tried to control. Word spread. Referrals came in. I was booked months in advance. Robert called me into his office one afternoon. Simone, I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. We want to expand your division. Hire more consultants, take on more clients. And we want you to lead it as senior partner. Senior partner. At 32 years old. Less than a year after restarting my career. Yes, I said without hesitation. Over the next few months, I hired 3 talented consultants, all women, all passionate about the work. We created programs, resources, workshops. We partnered with legal aid organizations and women's shelters. We became known as the firm that actually cared about protecting women's financial interests. I was featured in business magazines. Invited to speak at conferences. Asked to consult on high-profile cases. My career wasn't just rebuilt. It was thriving in ways it never had before. One evening, I attended a charity gala for the women's shelter I'd donated to. The director, Margaret, pulled me aside. Because of your donation, we've been able to expand our services. We've helped 200 women in the past 6 months. 20 of them have started their own businesses. 30 have gone back to school. All of them are safe. 200 women. 200 lives changed because I'd stood up for myself and then used my resources to help others do the same. That's what the money should be used for, I said. At the gala, I ran into someone I hadn't expected to see. One of the women from Preston's company, one who'd filed a harassment complaint. Simone, she said, approaching cautiously. I wanted to thank you. If you hadn't come forward, if you hadn't fought back, the rest of us wouldn't have had the courage to speak up. You did that yourself, I told her. You were brave. We were brave together, she corrected. That was the truth. None of us had done this alone. Every woman who'd spoken up had made it easier for the next one. Every story told had weakened Preston's power a little more. As winter turned to spring, I realized I'd been so focused on building my new life that I'd barely thought about dating, relationships, any of that. I was content alone. Happy even. But I was also open to possibilities. At a professional conference I met someone. His name was Troy and he was an architect presenting on sustainable building design. He was handsome in a quiet way, tall with warm brown skin and an easy smile. We talked during the lunch break. He was intelligent, thoughtful, interested in my work without being intimidated by my success. Would you like to get coffee sometime? He asked as the conference was ending. I'd like that, I said. Our first date was simple. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner turned into a walk through the park, and the walk turned into hours of conversation. Troy was recently divorced himself. Amicable, he said, they'd just grown apart. What about you? He asked. Your divorce seemed less amicable from what I've read. I appreciated his honesty. It was complicated. But I came out of it stronger. That's clear, he said. You seem very sure of yourself. It's attractive. We dated casually over the next few months. Troy respected my boundaries, never pushed for more than I was ready to give. He had his own successful career, his own life. We complemented each other rather than one of us disappearing into the other's shadow. I like that you don't need me, he said one evening over dinner. You want me around but you don't need me. That's healthy. He was right. I didn't need anyone. I wanted companionship, partnership, love eventually. But I would never again need someone so much that I lost myself. Meanwhile, Preston's legal troubles deepened. The FBI investigation concluded, and criminal charges were filed. Wire fraud, tax evasion, securities fraud. He was looking at potential prison time. His trial was set for the fall. I wouldn't attend. I'd given my deposition, provided my evidence. What happened to him now was between him and the justice system. Beatrice tried to contact me once. A letter arrived at my apartment, handwritten on expensive stationery. Simone, I know we had our differences, but family should stick together during difficult times. Preston is facing serious charges. Perhaps you could speak to the prosecutors, help them understand he's not a bad person, just someone who made mistakes. I read the letter twice, then fed it through my shredder. Family should stick together? She treated me like garbage for 5 years. She demanded my property. She'd enabled her son's abuse. Now she wanted my help? No. Some people never learned. Beatrice still thought the world owed her something just because she came from money. She still thought she could manipulate people into doing what she wanted. But those days were over. For both of them. I focused on work, on the women I could help. I focused on my relationship with Troy, which was growing deeper and more meaningful. I focused on my board responsibilities at the renamed company, now called Quantum Solutions. I bought a small house with a garden, something I'd always wanted. I adopted a rescue dog, a sweet mixed breed named Rosie. I took a painting class and discovered I actually enjoyed it. I traveled to places Preston had never wanted to go. I built a life that was entirely mine. One afternoon, my assistant told me there was someone in the lobby asking to see me without an appointment. Who is it? She says her name is Constance. She says she's your former sister-in-law. Preston's sister. I hadn't spoken to her since before the divorce. She'd been at that dinner, had watched me get assaulted, had said nothing. Send her up, I said, curious despite myself. Constance looked older than I remembered. Tired. She sat across from my desk, her hands folded in her lap. I don't expect you to forgive me, she started. I should have said something that night. I should have defended you. I was a coward. Yes, you were, I agreed. Preston is going to prison. The prosecutor offered a plea deal, 5 years. His lawyers advised him to take it. And? He's taking it. He'll be sentenced next month. Constance looked at me directly. My mother is still insisting this is all your fault. That you destroyed our family. She's delusional. What do you want from me, Constance? Nothing. I just wanted to apologize. And to tell you that I understand now. I understand why you did what you did. Preston was always my mother's golden child. She enabled his worst behavior. She taught him that he could do anything he wanted without consequences. And when you finally gave him consequences, she couldn't handle it. Thank you for saying that, I said. But it doesn't change anything. I can't forgive what your family did. I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm just sorry. After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time, thinking. An apology from Constance didn't undo the hurt. But it was something. Acknowledgement. Validation that I hadn't been crazy, hadn't overreacted, had been justified in everything I'd done. That evening, Troy came over for dinner. We cooked together in my new kitchen, Rosie begging for scraps at our feet. We talked about our days, made plans for the weekend, discussed a documentary we both wanted to see. was normal. Wonderfully, beautifully normal. You seem happy, Troy observed as we cleaned up after dinner. I am, I said, realizing it was completely true. I'm really happy. Good. You deserve to be. After he left that night, I stood in my living room looking at the life I'd built. Cozy furniture, books on shelves, photos of people I loved. Rosie curled up on her bed in the corner. Soft lamplight making everything warm. This wasn't the life I'd planned when I married Preston. It wasn't the mansion, the luxury, the status. But it was better. So much better. Because it was real. It was mine. And no one could take it away from me. Spring turned into summer, and my life continued to blossom in ways I'd never imagined. The women's financial consulting division I led had become one of the most successful departments at Weber & Associates. We'd helped over 100 clients in the past year alone. One morning I received an email that made me pause. It was from a publisher. Dear Ms. Harris, we've been following your work and your story. Would you be interested in writing a book about financial protection and empowerment for women? We believe your personal experience combined with your professional expertise would resonate with many readers. A book. My story, my advice, potentially helping thousands of women I'd never meet. I called Brielle to discuss it. Do it, she said immediately. You have knowledge people need. You've been through something terrible and came out stronger. Share that. Over the next few months, I worked on the book proposal. I wrote late at night after work, on weekends, whenever I had free time. Troy supported me, bringing me coffee when I was buried in drafts, reminding me to eat when I got too focused. The proposal was accepted. I signed a book deal. The advance was substantial, and I immediately donated half of it to women's organizations. Writing the actual book was harder than I expected. I had to revisit painful memories, relive the worst moments of my marriage. But I also got to write about the victory, the rebuilding, the strength I'd found. You're helping people even now, Troy said one evening as I struggled with a particularly difficult chapter about the night of the assault. Every woman who reads this will see herself in your story. They'll know they're not alone. The book took 6 months to write. During that time, Preston was sentenced. 5 years in federal prison for fraud and tax evasion. I didn't attend the sentencing. I read about it in the news. Preston's statement to the judge was predictable. He blamed everyone but himself. He claimed he'd been set up by vengeful ex-wives and business partners. He insisted he was a good person who'd made minor mistakes. The judge wasn't swayed. Mr. Montgomery, you systematically defrauded investors, employees, and your own wife. You abused your position of power in multiple ways. Your lack of remorse is concerning. I'm sentencing you to 5 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You'll also pay $8 million in restitution to affected parties. $8 million on top of the $40 million he'd already paid me in the divorce settlement. Preston's fortune was completely gone. When he got out of prison, he'd be starting over with nothing. Beatrice, still under house arrest, gave an interview claiming her son was innocent. No one believed her anymore. She'd lost all credibility. Meanwhile, my book was published in the fall. Reclaiming Your Worth, a financial guide to protecting yourself, hit shelves in October. The publisher scheduled a small book tour, 5 cities, bookstore readings, and discussions. The first reading was in my hometown. My parents came, along with friends, colleagues, even some former clients. The bookstore was packed. I read from the chapter about discovering Preston's fraud, about the moment I realized I had to save myself because no one else would. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone was clapping. During the question and answer session, a young woman raised her hand. My boyfriend controls all our money. He says it's because I'm bad with finances, but I'm starting to think it's about control. How do I start protecting myself without him knowing? I walked her through the steps. Separate accounts. Documentation. Securing important papers. Building a support network. Exit planning. The same things I'd done. After the reading, women lined up to have their books signed. Many of them shared their own stories. Abusive relationships. Financial manipulation. Feeling trapped. Wanting to escape. You give me hope, one woman said, tears in her eyes. If you can rebuild after everything you went through, maybe I can too. You can, I told her. You absolutely can. The book tour was exhausting but exhilarating. Every city, every reading, more women with stories. More women looking for guidance. More women ready to reclaim their own worth. By the time I returned home, the book had hit the bestseller list. My publisher was already talking about a second book, maybe a series. Troy had Rosie and flowers waiting when I walked through my door. Welcome home, author, he said, kissing me. It feels good to be home. We'd been dating for over a year now, and our relationship had deepened into something solid and real. Troy had met my parents. I'd met his daughter from his previous marriage, a sweet 10-year-old who liked to draw. We talked about the future without fear, without pressure. "I love you," Troy said that evening as we sat on my couch, Rosie sprawled across our laps. "I love you too," I said, meaning it completely. This was so different from what I'd had with Preston. There was no power imbalance. No one controlling the other. Just two people who'd found each other and chose to build something together. At work, Robert called me into his office with news. "We want to spin off your division into its own firm. You'd be the founder and CEO. We'd provide initial funding and resources, but it would be yours to run. My own firm. My name on the door. Complete autonomy to help women the way I wanted to help them." "Yes," I said. "Absolutely yes." The paperwork took months, but by the following spring, Harris Financial Consulting opened its doors. Small office, 5 employees to start, but it was mine. My first client at the new firm was a woman whose husband had hidden assets before filing for divorce. Using everything I'd learned from my own experience, I helped her find every account, every investment, every hidden dollar. She got a fair settlement and custody of her children. "You saved my life," she told me. "No," I said. "You saved your own life. I just gave you the tools." The firm grew quickly. We took on cases other consultants wouldn't touch. Complex frauds, international accounts, powerful men trying to hide money from women they'd promised to love. We fought back against all of them. 1 year after opening my firm, I was invited to speak at a national conference on financial abuse and recovery. The audience was full of lawyers, advocates, survivors, professionals who worked in this field. I told my story. All of it. The plight. The betrayal. The discovery. The fight. The victory. The rebuilding. "I was lucky," I said in conclusion. "I had resources many women don't have. I had a friend who was a lawyer. I had money from my previous career. I had property in my own name. Not every woman has these advantages. That's why I do this work. To level the playing field. To give women the tools and knowledge they need to protect themselves, regardless of their circumstances." The standing ovation lasted several minutes. After the speech, a woman approached me. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. "You don't remember me," she said. "I was at that dinner. I was serving food that night Preston hit you. I saw everything." I remembered then. The catering staff, invisible to Preston and his family, but present for my humiliation. "I wanted to help you," she continued. "But I couldn't. I needed that job. I had kids to feed. I'm sorry." "You don't need to apologize," I said. "I understand. I want you to know I told everyone about what I saw. When the investigation happened, when the lawyers called, I testified. I made sure they knew exactly what happened. He didn't get away with it because people like me spoke up." I hugged her. This stranger who'd witnessed my worst moment and then stood up for me when it mattered. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for speaking up." These were the people who'd helped me win. Not just Brielle and Julian and Gabriel, but also the housekeeper who'd seen documents. The employee who'd confirmed the affair. The catering worker who'd testified about the assault. Justice wasn't just about lawyers and courts. It was about ordinary people doing the right thing. My second book came out that fall. Breaking Free, Stories of Women Who Reclaimed Their Financial Power. It featured interviews with dozens of women I'd worked with, their stories of survival and success. It sold even better than the first. I was invited to television interviews, radio shows, podcasts. People wanted to hear about financial abuse, wanted to understand how to protect themselves and others. The conversation was changing. What had once been a shameful secret was now something people discussed openly. At 34 years old, I was running a successful firm, had published 2 books, owned part of a major tech company, had a healthy relationship with a man who respected me, and had helped hundreds of women protect themselves. Preston was in prison. Beatrice was a convicted criminal under house arrest. Natasha had disappeared from public view. And I was thriving. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that dinner. The sound of the plate shattering. The food dripping down my face. The silence of people who could have helped but didn't. I'd think about how scared I'd been. How small I'd felt. How certain I was that I had no options, no power, no way out. I'd been wrong about that. I'd had power all along. I just needed to remember how to use it. "What are you thinking about?" Troy asked one evening, noticing my distant expression. "Just how far I've come," I said. "You should be proud." "I'm proud of you." "I am proud." For the first time in a long time, I'm genuinely proud of who I am and what I've built. He kissed my forehead. As you should be. Life wasn't perfect. I still had hard days, memories that hurt, moments of anger at what had been done to me. But mostly I had peace. Peace that came from knowing I'd stood up for myself. Peace that came from helping others do the same. Peace that came from building a life on my own terms. That was worth more than any settlement, any revenge, any victory in court. That was freedom. 2 years after my divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. My assistant buzzed me. There's a man here to see you. He says his name is Preston Montgomery. My heart stopped for a moment. Preston. Here. What? Tell him I'm not available, I said. I already did. He says he'll wait. He says it's important. I considered calling security. I considered calling Brielle. But curiosity got the better of me. What could he possibly want? Fine. But I want you to stay within earshot. If I need you, I'll call. Preston entered my office looking nothing like the man I'd married. Prison had aged him. He was thinner, grayer, with a defeated slump to his shoulders. He wore cheap clothes that didn't fit properly. Simone, he said. What are you doing here, Preston? You're supposed to be in prison for another 2 years. Good behavior. Early release. I've been out for 3 weeks. And you came here because? I needed to see you. To talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. Please. He sat down without being invited. Just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I sat across from him. 5 minutes. Then you leave and never contact me again. I'm sorry, Preston said. For everything. The affair, the abuse, the theft. All of it. I was wrong. I was so wrong. You want forgiveness? Is that why you're here? No. I know I don't deserve that. I just needed you to know that I understand now. Prison gave me a lot of time to think. To see clearly. You were the best thing in my life and I destroyed it because I was selfish and stupid. You destroyed it because you were cruel, I corrected. You didn't just make mistakes, Preston. You systematically abused me. Financially, emotionally, physically. That wasn't stupidity. That was calculated malice. He flinched. You're right. I know I'm right. Is there anything else? I saw your books. Both of them. I read them in prison. You wrote about me, about us. I wrote about financial abuse and recovery. You just happened to be the abuser in my story. I know. And reading it from your perspective, seeing how my actions affected you, it made me sick. I didn't realize how bad it was. You didn't realize that smashing a plate over my head was bad? That stealing from me was bad? That having affairs was bad? Preston, you knew exactly what you were doing. Maybe. He looked at his hands. I don't know anymore. My mother convinced me I was entitled to whatever I wanted. That you were lucky to be with me. That I deserved more than you were giving. She poisoned my thinking. Don't blame your mother. She's terrible, but you made your own choices. I know. He looked up at me. You're successful now. Really successful. I saw the articles about your firm, your books, your speaking engagements. You're doing better than you ever did when we were together. Because I'm free, I said. Because I can finally be myself without someone constantly diminishing me. I made you small, Preston said quietly. That's what you said in your book. I made you small. And you were right. I needed you to be small so I could feel big. This was the most self-aware I'd ever heard Preston be. Prison had changed him, or at least made him better at reflection. Is this conversation helping you somehow? I asked. Because it's not helping me. I guess I just wanted you to know that you won. Not just the legal battles, though you won those too. But you won at life. You're happy. Successful. Free. And I'm living in a studio apartment, working at a call center, trying to rebuild from nothing. You won completely. This was never about winning, Preston. This was about survival. About getting away from someone who was hurting me. About protecting myself and other women from men like you. Men like me, he repeated. That's what I am now. A cautionary tale. Yes. And you earned that. Preston stood up. I won't bother you again. I just needed to see you, to apologize in person. To tell you that I'm sorry, even though it doesn't change anything. You're right. It doesn't change anything. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're happy. You deserve to be. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, processing the encounter. Preston had apologized. He'd acknowledged his faults. He'd admitted I was right about everything. But it didn't feel like victory. It just felt like confirmation that leaving him had been the right choice. I called Troy. Preston showed up at my office. I said, What? Are you okay? Do you want me to come over? I'm fine. He apologized. Said I was right about everything. Then he left. How do you feel? Honestly? Nothing. I don't feel angry or satisfied or vindicated. I just feel nothing. He's irrelevant to my life now. That's probably healthy, Troy said. It means you've really moved on. He was right. I had moved on. Preston was my past, a painful chapter that I'd survived and learned from. But he wasn't my present or my future. That evening, I went home to Troy, to Rosie, to my cozy house with its garden. We made dinner together, laughed at something silly Rosie did, talked about Troy's daughter's upcoming school play. This was my life now. Simple, warm, real. A week later, I got a call from Gabriel. I thought you should know, Preston tried to apply for a job at Quantum Solutions again. Using his real name this time, claiming he'd learned from his mistakes and wanted to contribute to the company's success. What did you do? Rejected him immediately. But it made me wonder if he understands that he'll never work in tech again. His reputation is destroyed. No one will hire him for anything beyond basic entry-level work. That's his consequence to live with. True. But I wanted you to know, in case he tries to contact you again. He already did. Showed up at my office to apologize. And nothing. I accepted his apology, told him we had nothing further to discuss, and moved on with my life. Good for you. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. Beatrice completed her house arrest later that year. She was released but required to continue paying restitution. Her mansion was sold to pay legal fees and penalties. She moved into a small condo, a fraction of the size of her former home. She never tried to contact me. Perhaps she finally understood that I was never going to help her, never going to forgive her, never going to be the doormat she'd wanted. Natasha's book came out that fall. A memoir about being seduced by a powerful man, about the promises he'd made and broken. It didn't sell well. People were tired of women who'd willingly participated in affairs claiming victim status. I didn't read it. I didn't care about her story. She'd made her choices just as I'd made mine. My firm continued to grow. We opened a second office. Hired more consultants. Partnered with national organizations focused on domestic violence prevention and financial literacy. I was invited to testify before Congress about financial abuse in marriages and the need for better legal protections for victims. I spoke clearly, professionally, sharing statistics and stories and recommendations. Legislation was introduced. Not everything I'd hoped for, but a start. New laws requiring financial disclosure in divorces. New penalties for hiding assets. New resources for women seeking to protect themselves. Real change. Tangible progress. On my 35th birthday, Troy proposed. Simple, sweet, in our garden with Rosie as a witness. A beautiful ring that wasn't ostentatious, just elegant and perfect. I love you, he said. You're the strongest, most inspiring person I know. Will you marry me? Yes, I said without hesitation. This was different. This was a man who respected me, who supported me, who never tried to make me smaller. This was partnership, not ownership. We planned a small wedding. Close friends and family only. My parents cried happy tears. Troy's daughter was our flower girl. Brielle was my maid of honor. Look at you, Brielle said as she helped me get ready. Successful businesswoman, best-selling author, advocate for women's rights, and now a bride again. You did it, Simone. You really did it. We did it, I corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. The wedding was perfect. Sunlight streaming through windows, flowers everywhere, people I loved surrounding me. Troy looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. When we said our vows, I meant every word. This time, I was choosing a partner from a position of strength, not need. This time, I knew my worth. At the reception, my father gave a toast. To my daughter, who taught us all what it means to be strong. Who survived the unthinkable and turned it into purpose. Who helps other women find their strength. We're so proud of you, Simone. So very proud. I cried happy tears. Real tears. Tears of joy, not pain. Later, as Troy and I danced, he whispered, "Thank you for letting me be part of your story. Thank you for being someone worth including," I whispered back. This was my happy ending. Not a fairy tale where everything was perfect, but a real story of survival and rebuilding and finding genuine happiness. I'd faced my worst nightmare and come out stronger. I'd taken what was meant to break me and used it to build something beautiful. I'd reclaimed my worth. And that was everything. 2 years after marrying Troy, I stood at the podium of my firm's 5th anniversary celebration. The conference room we'd rented was packed with clients, staff, partners, and advocates from organizations we'd worked with. 5 years ago, I opened Harris Financial Consulting with a mission: to protect women's financial futures and empower them to take control of their lives. I never imagined we'd help over 500 women in that time. I never imagined we'd expand to 4 offices across 3 states. I never imagined the impact we could have. The room erupted in applause. I looked out at the faces, recognizing so many stories. Women who'd come to me broken and left empowered. Women who'd protected their assets, left abusive situations, started businesses, rebuilt their lives. But this isn't my achievement alone. This is our achievement. Every consultant who works here, every lawyer who partners with us, every woman who found the courage to walk through our door. We did this together. After the speeches and celebrating, I found a quiet corner with a glass of champagne. Brielle joined me. "Remember when you first called me?" she said. "You were so scared but so determined." "I was terrified," I admitted. "I had no idea if I could actually win." "But you did. And you changed the whole game." My 3rd book had just been published, this one a practical guide for financial professionals on recognizing and addressing financial abuse in their clients' lives. It was already required reading in several graduate programs. Troy approached with Rosie on a leash, having taken her for a walk during the formal part of the event. "Your speech was beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek. "Thank you for being here." "Always." His daughter, now a teenager, ran over. "Mom, did you see the article about you in Business Week? They called you a titan of the financial consulting industry." "I saw," I said, smiling. Life had become wonderfully full. Work that mattered, a family I loved, a marriage built on respect and partnership, a purpose that drove me forward. One afternoon a few weeks later, I was leaving my office when I saw a familiar face across the street. Preston, standing by a bus stop, looking tired and old. He saw me too. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the busy street. Then I smiled, a real smile, and walked to my car. A nice car, not ostentatious but comfortable. A car I'd bought with my own money. I drove home to my beautiful house, the one Troy and I had bought together. Both our names on the deed. Equal partnership in everything. Rosie greeted me at the door, tail wagging. Troy was in the kitchen cooking dinner. "How was your day?" he asked. "Good. Really good." We ate dinner together, talking about our days, making plans for the weekend. Normal. Beautiful. Real. Later, as I was getting ready for bed, I looked at myself in the mirror. At 37 years old, I looked happier than I ever had. Confident. Successful. Free. My phone buzzed. A text from a new client. "Thank you for agreeing to take my case. My husband thinks I'm trapped. He doesn't know I've found you. I'm ready to fight." I texted back, "We'll fight together. You're not alone." This was my life now. Helping women find their strength. Using my experience to light the way for others. Turning pain into purpose. I thought about that dinner 5 years ago. The sound of shattering porcelain. The humiliation. The moment I'd said, "You have no idea what I'm capable of." I'd shown them. I'd shown everyone. But more importantly, I'd shown myself. I was capable of surviving. Of rebuilding. Of thriving. Of helping others do the same. I climbed into bed next to Troy. He put his book down and pulled me close. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." As I drifted off to sleep, I felt profound gratitude. Not for what I'd been through, nobody should have to experience that. But for who I'd become because of it. Stronger. Wiser. Fiercer. Kinder. A woman who knew her worth. A woman who helped other women know theirs. A woman who'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and transformed it into the best thing she ever did. That was my story. Not a fairy tale. Not a revenge fantasy. Just the truth of one woman who refused to stay broken. One woman who stood up, fought back, and won. Not by destroying her enemies, though they destroyed themselves. But by building a life so beautiful, so purposeful, so full of love and meaning that the past couldn't touch it. That was the best revenge of all. Living well. Being happy. Being free. And that was exactly what I was.